Almost there. Hey, greetings, everyone. It's Naomi Wolf of Daily Clout and Outspoken, and I'm here, second appearance on Outspoken, the activist and Maui advocate, Maui fires investigator, Michelle Melendez. Welcome, Michelle Melendez.
Aloha, everyone, and mahalo so much for having me again, Naomi.
It's my pleasure. We had a very powerful reaction to your last appearance. Just to refresh people's memories, Ms. Melendez brought up and kind of explored, revealed very disturbing, concerning anomalies regarding the Maui fires. She's a Hawaiian activist, and she's the author of the award-winning book, Great Maui Land Grab: What Caused the Maui Fire and Is Your Home Next? And you can find it on greatmauilandgrabbook.com, and it's in its third edition. And this new edition, which was why I wanted to speak with her, has 21 LA fire anomalies. So that's very concerning. And even since I booked this appearance with Ms. Melendez, of course, we now have crazy wildfires in North and South Carolina. So she's a freedom activist and a wellness expert since 1996. She's written other best-selling books, and she's really making an impact, sharing with people, very concerning anomalies. So let's just dive right in. I don't think we need to recap the Maui situation because you did such a good job describing what was anomalous about that, and people can look at our video interview. But let's just jump right in. When you say 21 LA fire anomalies, some of our best friends are in the Pacific Palisades. It's such a bizarre, traumatic, clearly attack of some kind on the American homeland. What do you mean by 21 LA fire anomalies?
Well, there's different things very similar to Maui with the wind. First of all, what happened 11 months prior to the fire in LA, there was a heavy rains. 6 months prior to Maui, heavy rains, then drought. Then both of them had crazy wind. The wind that they're talking about with the LA fires that happened, that wind, and the name is escaping me right now, but it normally doesn't last for 17 days. It lasts for about 3 to 4 days. So that was an anomaly stated by, and I actually have a quote by a meteorologist who was talking about the Santa Ana winds.
Santa Ana winds is what you were saying.
Yeah, there we go. Santa Ana winds. Senior meteorologist Ken Clark: Santa Ana winds peak for 12 to 24 hours. On rare occasions, can persist for a few days.
Can you speak up a little bit? Turn up your volume a little bit. What you're saying is very important. It's a little difficult to hear you.
Is that a little bit better?
A little better. If you just raise the volume of your voice a little bit, that would be great.
Sure. So Santa Ana winds peak for 12 to 24 hours. On rare occasions, can persist for a few days. But these Santa Ana winds went off and on for 17 days. Maui, the LA winds, they came down from the east. They came down the mountain, which is really rare because the Lahaina sits right under
Maui. So you're talking about Maui or LA?
They're both. The winds on both occasions, very strange. Like the Santa Ana winds in Los Angeles lasted for 17 days, on and off for 17 days. And then also now we have the South Carolina fires.
I got criticized the last time I interviewed you for interrupting you. So when I raise my hand like this, please know that I'm just trying to jump in with a follow-up question. You're doing great. I grew up in California, not to be devil's advocot, but the Santa Ana winds, right? They always come over the mountain, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they just not in Maui, but yes, I've lived in California too, and I've lived in LA, Los Angeles. They don't last for 17 days. This is actually a meteorologist, a senior meteorologist, Ken Clark, and he stated this. It was on 2014, I think it is. I have it in my book, but he literally states that these winds, they They do come, but they don't last for very, very long. Also, they don't normally come in January. They normally are at a different time, a different time of year. The other thing that's happening in LA, the reason why it's 21 oddities is because there's so many mistakes with the governor, the Maui, the LA mayor being out of town, then her leaked phone call. Then she also was told that the LA.
Sorry, Michelle,
Sure.
you're going a little too fast. What
Sorry.
leaked phone call? That's okay. Just
Oh,
assume.
oh my gosh. Okay, I can actually show you guys that.
Listen for a minute. Listen for a minute.
Sure.
Please assume that no one who's listening has any idea about this story. So when you say the LA mayor being away on her trip, just fill in a little what the blanks are. You know, her leaked phone call,
Sure.
what leaked phone call. Okay, thank you.
Sure. Yeah. So the mayor was out of town. First, when she was running for mayor, she said that she would not leave the country. She would only go to DC and Los Angeles. She would not leave the country. She went to Ghana. There was the first warning was January 4th, warning about possible fire danger in Los Angeles. She left on January 4th. There was a leaked phone call, and it was James O'Keefe. He's the first one that posted it. I do have it in my book, but also I can show it to you guys. And it's basically her talking with somebody the day of January 4th before she left. She left January 5th, and the fire started January 7th. And so she literally is talking with the man saying that I just want you to be safe. I cannot, I can't really go into detail right now, and I can actually show you guys the video or the leaks call if you guys want. Then James O'Keefe was the first one to disclose that.
Michelle, sorry. A leaked phone call of that kind is a very big deal. It's illegal to, record a conversation without the consent of the person being recorded in many states, if not all states. I think all states you need one party consent, and some states you need both parties to consent. So how did James O'Keefe get that leaked phone call? Do you know?
Let me show you. A share screen. Let me show you guys what I'm talking about. And here it is. It's right here. And let me go to play. And I'll just click on it, and you guys can hear it for yourselves. Can you hear that?
No. Very faint.
Okay.
Oh, we instead of struggling with the technology, which I'm afraid would be difficult, is there anything in what James O'Keefe posted that you can see that explains the source of this? Sourcing is very important for our audience.
Yes, absolutely. Let me show you. I will turn this out and explain with you where I'm talking, where this is coming from. And I can also give you the link, and you can post it in the description, and your people can see it.
I just need to be able to explain, right now in this podcast, if we're referencing a source, I just need to be able to tell the audience, or you tell the audience, where it comes from. And it's okay if you don't know, we can move on, but we can't use it as a point of evidence unless we can source it.
Sure. Well, I'll send you the link, and then your folks can take a look at it for themselves. It doesn't really say where it's come from. It says Karen Mayer Bass talking about her trip before Ghana, and it has the date January 4th. So I'll send you the link, and your people can
James O'Keefe somehow got this leaked from someone, which is pretty intense, because it means someone had access to Karen Bass's personal phone calls.
The other thing I want to share around this is about the California governor. A lot of things went down with him. First, he starts talking about Marshall Plan and creating LA 2.0 prior to the fires even being out. This is the same as the Hawaii governor, just a very inappropriate time of talking about rebuilding. The first interview that the Hawaii governor did, with the very first words out of his mouth after the fire was, "I'm looking for ways for the state to acquire the land for workforce housing." The very first interview. And prior to the fires being out in Los Angeles, the California governor says, we're working on a Marshall Plan, which that word Marshall is actually a little bit disturbing to me, to create LA 2.0. And he's got a huge smile on his face. The other thing with the California governor is he starts talking about, again, prior to the fires being out, the middle of the fires, he has a huge smile on his face. He's doing a dance with his shoulders, talking about
Weird.
how he spoke with the Hawaii governor about land speculators, and smile on his face. I mean, it's just really inappropriate when these fires are burning down people's homes. Thousands of people are getting displaced, and the California governor has a huge smile on his face, smiling
Very true.
about this. The other thing with him is he. Go ahead.
Michelle,
Sorry.
jumping in.
Yep.
So people are really harassed. It's really interesting the reaction we get when I interview you. I'm really getting harassed on my feed for engaging with you in a.
Please, no, I love your engagement is welcomed.
Thank you, but I just need to clarify something for our audience, okay? So, and this is not critical, Elizabeth Tucci. I'm not condescending to Michelle. I'm letting Michelle speak. She will have all the time she needs. But as a point of information for the audience, Marshall, the way he was using it, refers to the Marshall Plan post-World War II, when America went into ruined Germany and invested in rebuilding. It's not Marshall, Martial, which would be very, very, they're both disturbing, right? But he's not saying martial like martial law. It's not like military martial. So just letting you know. And I totally agree with you about the weird dance that this guy was doing. It was bizarre and very, very disturbing. And go ahead, Michelle.
The other thing that he did was he posted a tweet saying that there was disinformation about the fires. In fact, let me just pull it up and I can either show it to you guys or I'll just read it. But his tweet was a ridiculous lie. Gavin Newsom, we have doubled the size of our firefighting army, he says, built the world's largest aerial firefighting fleet, and increased the forest management tenfold since taking office. And that's not true. They actually cut the fire budget.
Wow.
By $100 million before the lethal California fires. I actually also have the entire budget.
Oh, Michelle.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
That's fine. I know you're very passionate about your subject, as you should be. Did they cut the budget by $100 million shortly before the fires, or like in 10 years before, 5 years before?
No, it was shortly. It was shortly before. And let me show you guys the budget. The budget, it was really strange, because this is first of all, this is his tweet that he says, and then Fox News says that no, they cut the fire budget by $100 million months before the lethal California fire. And then I do want to share the budget, and it's kind of small, but let me, I'll do it. I'll try to do a little bit bigger. The police, this is the city of LA budget for 2024 to 2025 department operational budget. And they increased the police by $126 million. It was the most they increased. And they lowered the fire department by $17.6 million. It's the second to the last at the bottom of that.
Yeah, we don't see your screen, I'm afraid.
Oh, okay. Well, those were the numbers, and I can share that. I'll share that clip with you as well.
You know, a really good practice for our audience is just say where the source is from. You know, if it says Fox News, say that. If it says, you know, LAPD, say that. Just mention the source.
This is the city of Los Angeles budget department.
Wonderful.
California. Yeah.
Very solid source. Okay, great. Go ahead, please.
And then the other thing is that the LA mayor and the Maui governor, so the LA mayor in 2023 and 2024, she actually prioritized homelessness in the budget. And let me just read it for you guys. 2023 to 2024, the fire department budget was $833 million, and that was roughly 65% of the homeless budget, which was $1.3 billion. And what's really interesting about that is that the Hawaii governor suspended 20 laws. He made his own he did an emergency proclamation on homelessness in Hawaii, even though there wasn't 911 calls for homeless people. Morgues weren't made with, tons of more homeless people. He literally suspended 20 laws, met with over 200 people for 6 months. So why are they both prioritizing homelessness? Now what's happening? Homelessness. How many thousands of people in LA are homeless? And the Maui fire, just so you guys know, they are still having issues. They're not letting people rebuild on the coast. There's been 3 building permits in Lahaina. The most building permits are being issued outside Lahaina. People are really struggling even after, 17, 18 months after the fire in Maui. They're still not giving people permits to build. It took over a year for the first permit to be allowed in Lahaina. So the other thing with
land. These are people's own land. I just want to jump in and thank you, Michelle, because your report on how people were not being allowed through barriers to get back in to their own land, and kind of military or quasi-military or, state kind of troopers, as I recall, preventing them from having access. It led me to tell my friend who lives in Pacific Palisades that, this could well happen to her home. And as a result, her husband never left. Like, I was worried about him too, but he literally stayed, and their home is fine. But it helped her, and no doubt many people who follow, your work and this interview, it helped a lot of people in LA, no doubt, to fear the worst and be prepared for what actually happened, which was the exact same thing. There was a barricade, and I posted this on my ex. Our friend took a picture of it, literally a barricade around people's burnt out plots in Pacific Palisades. They weren't letting the people back in, even to get their own passports or credit cards, or sit through the rubble, find family photographs. Exactly the same scenario. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, well, the other thing too is you want to look at. I couldn't believe it when I was watching this through LA. This I think it was Fox News that showed the devastation of Palisades, and all the trees are there, all the shrubs are there, the leaves on the trees are there, and so I have there's about 3 or 4 different pictures of LA with the houses disintegrated into white ash, no fridge, no stove, no toilet, but yet all the trees are still up. So what that means, when you have white ash, you have really, really hot fire. Plus, the number of fires that happened in Los Angeles, 3 fires happening at the exact same time. Prior to this interview, I just got off the phone with Captain Matt Dankin, 33-year firefighter and retired captain. He literally, and we talked about South Carolina. He said, Michelle, he says, when you're looking at the fire, he goes, look at how many. He's like, in South Carolina, there's almost 200. There's like 175 or more right now. He's like, you don't have, that's not climate change. Climate change doesn't just start a fire. He's like, you need to have something that ignites that fire. And in Los Angeles, 3 fires happened the exact same time, and the way that it burned was so hot that it left white ash. It disintegrated homes, but it left the trees. And people ask why. And I asked an arborist about that, and he said because the chemistry of the fire is a microwave chemistry, and the chemistry of these fires doesn't recognize organic material. This is why the trees are not burning. In my book, there's people that you see that are not burned from the outside in. You can actually see hair. You actually see a dog with his nose and his ears and his paw pads. That doesn't happen in a regular fire because this chemistry of this fire is different. There is a U.S. patent, you guys, for a microwave frequency laser. And I know people are going, oh, lasers. There's a patent, a U.S. patent, and I can actually read it to you. A U.S. patent that has that provides this, has this technology, and it's called a microwave transmission using laser-generated plasma beam waveguide that uses a titanium sapphire infrared laser and produces a thin ionizing beam. Then people go, okay, well, direct energy weapons. You guys, they've had direct energy weapons system acquisition act of 2016. The Department of Defense actually was afraid. They've been working on direct energy weapons since prior to the 60s, because they literally state in this act, in 2016 act, the Direct Energy Weapons Systems Acquisition Act of Congress, the Defense Department states that since the 1960s, they have spent over $6 billion since the 60s, but they are afraid they cannot bring the direct energy weapons program to full fruition. So the United States Congress took it over. You can look it up. Direct Energy Weapons Acquisition Act of 2016. It will come up. And the other thing people really need to know is that we have had weather modification since the late 1800s. And the number one, the very first patent for weather modification was in 1891 to produce rain. And they had an Operation Popeye operation for the Vietnam War in 1967 to 1972. So they to produce rain for in Cambodia, so I'm sorry, Vietnam, on the Ho Chi Minh Trail. So if they wanted these fires out, they could have them out like that in moments, because they did 2,600 cloud seeding flights between 1967 and 1972 over Vietnam to produce rain. The soldiers called it Operation Mud. And if they wanted these fires out, they could have them out instantly.
Wow. Well, this is pretty overwhelming. I don't know if the huge number of trolls that we're getting in the comments are human or bots. But if you're human, my husband always says, don't respond to the trolls. I guess I just want to say, like, a little bit of a detour or a rant. I don't need to do this. I don't need to do this. I don't need to cover these issues. I don't need to do real reporting of subjects that take on the most powerful interests on Earth. I also happen to be physically disabled right now and in constant pain, and literally sitting here being in pain, doing my public service, listening to Michelle Melendez, who is also doing her public service, and making my platform available for an incredibly important message that could, and I would say has, saved a lot of lives, really is too important a job to be messed with, demeaned, and disrupted by, if you're human, small-minded humans who have literally nothing to do but harass me, and by extension, Michelle Melendez. I don't know why my interviews with Michelle Melendez bring out these awful people. Then get the fuck OH, lady. We don't want you. We just want Michelle. Someone else is criticizing my appearance. It's all over the
goodness.
place.
You guys, honestly, I reached out to Naomi because her platform is really important. And I reached out to her to, one, say thank you for having me on her show, and also to ask if I could be on again because of this information. And she's vital to, I hate to say our fight, but our fight for freedom. She's really, really vital to that. So if you are a human being and and you want your freedom, one, thanks for following her, and be Pono. We call it Pono. Be kind, be aloha, because we're all in this together. And you know what? Nobody is getting out of this. If your home may not be destroyed, but they're coming through the general plans to your home to take your property, and who they are the I'm just going to say it, the elite bankers who literally run the or have the most stock, I should say, in the renewable energy companies and the electric companies. That's who's doing this, you guys. These people, they've been running the world for a very long time. In my research, they've taken over this country. But Naomi is a light warrior of truth. So and you know what? You guys got to be more aloha than that, because you got to give it to her. She's put out information. I found her and I was like, oh my gosh, I really want to be on her platform.
Thank you.
I kept calling her, kept writing her, sent her my book, and was just so grateful to have a voice.
I appreciate your kind words. We can go back to your subject. I appreciate that defense. And I really appreciate it, because even people who are blessed with a large platform like mine, we're human, and people really need to, and I promise I'll stop talking about this in a minute, but people really need at a time like this to think about whether they want independent platforms to exist, because it is not easy to run a platform that's not funded by pharma and, not now like even, a mouthpiece for the new administration, as much as many of us may like it. Just give some thought to that the people that you're trolling or attacking or harassing are humans, and they have their own problems. And, if you want to take over and interview Michelle Melendez, by all means, hop right here, Ms. Kerrville, and we'll put you on camera and we'll see how your day is going. And, you can bring yourself to the public and, be a grown-up and step into the ring, but otherwise, please give me and Michelle Melendez the courtesy of focusing on her subject. And if you don't like me, you can find Michelle, no doubt, on other platforms. We will send you to her website. This is my platform. This is my podcast, and I'm in charge of it. So please go elsewhere if you're not willing to be civil. That doesn't mean you can't raise objections, but you have to be exactly just as kind and civil as I would be to you and as Michelle would be. Now, let's go back of the many disturbing things you just shared, Michelle. One of the striking things is you said that in LA, toilets and refrigerators were white dust, but organic material like trees was untouched. And an arborist to whom you spoke, and I really appreciate that good citizen journalism, now journalism really, checking with an arborist what's going on here. That's really important information. Because many people have looked at those images of the trees standing and the structures and the, as you say, the appliances, which are metal, and porcelain, just completely gone, powder. And they're like, how is this possible? So I'm not saying that's the explanation, because, we're not at the end of the investigation, but that's certainly an explanation. If an arborist says that it's a microwave-based technology, that kind of makes sense to me, the way that things in microwave ovens don't really burn from the outside in. They kind of hollow out. They kind of
exactly.
And,
exactly. And then if you put metal in a microwave, it sparks up. I mean, this is why these engine blocks are melted out. These rims are melted out. Glass is melted. Glass burns or melts. I believe it's 24 to 2,500 degrees, and a regular wildfire is between 12 and 1,400 degrees. So these cars. I even my friend who's the firefighter. He says the cars don't look like this in a regular wildfire. Plus,
say more about that. What do cars look like in a regular wildfire?
The cars, the glass is not melted. The glass is not melted out. The rims, the aluminum rims are not melted out. The entire car isn't just destroyed. These homes, if this was a regular wildfire, these homes would have the foundation of the fridge, the stove, toilets, and they would be black charred. They would be charred.
We all know that. I mean, go back in our mental memory. Houses that have burnt down are full of burned structures, charred structures, and they're black. They're blackened. They're not powdery dust like, dare I say it, the World Trade Centers.
That's right.
But that's another subject. All right. Well, that explains a lot. The other thing I want to ask, if you don't mind going into this a little bit before you go on to your other points, I know you've got a lot of them. One thing that I kept asking during the LA fires is, where are the bodies? Where are the bodies? I don't, hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of homes were burned, right? And there is no way that everyone was out shopping in another part of town. There were old people, there were nannies, there were kids, there were babies, there were disabled people, surely. And the last death toll I saw was 28. And that was a while ago, but I don't think I've seen anything larger than that. So that's not possible. There must be hundreds of bodies.
That's correct. That's the same
thing I remember. Sorry, I'm almost done. The thing I remember you saying when we last spoke about Maui is that there were many, 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 many people missing and children missing. And I believe there must be many, many, many people missing in LA. And one thing that didn't happen, talk about an anomaly, is there was no municipal list of the missing and the dead that was in real time or even afterwards, right? So did any of your sources say anything about where are the bodies?
No, I haven't seen anything about the LA bodies. What I know about what happened with Maui is that the people who came to pick up the bodies had to sign, excuse me, a non-disclosure, which is really, really very
Wow.
totally is like very uncommon, very uncommon. These boat captains from friends who are locals who I stay with in Maui, they have two boat captains. One signed a non-disclosure. He picked up he says he picked up 180 bodies. This is secondhand knowledge, but he said he picked up 180 bodies. The other boat captain said he picked up over 200.
Oh my
Neither
God.
one of them are coming forward. Then I have a friend who works for national security who was contacted. She's actually a personal friend of mine. She said she was contacted by a friend of hers who also was asked to go to Maui to pick up the bodies in the water. And he said he had to sign a non-disclosure, and he was picking up bodies that were in a swimming position, frozen in a swimming position. This means something hit them. Just like the dog that you'll see, if you get my book, you'll see this dog run. It's like frozen running. It's like running, but it's like stopped. And an animal will not run out in the middle of a fire. It will hide. It will hide under something, and it'll crouch down. This dog, you can literally see its paws going, like running straight paws. We have a toad that is jumping, and it's in a frozen position, hollowed from the inside out, just like you said. When you put something in a microwave, it hollows out, it heats it up from the inside out. But it's not normal. And I was wondering that same thing too, Naomi. I was like, somebody's got pictures of these bodies, because the pictures I have in my book from the Maui bodies, they were from locals and they were the very next day, within hours of the fire being over. Somebody's got these pictures. I would assume, because I haven't seen any. And you're absolutely right. Where's the count? Where's the body count? And there's no way that's 2,800 dead. Or I'm sorry, 28 dead. That's more like 2,800, because that's impossible. Just like with Maui, it's impossible. 103 bodies
Right.
dead. There's just no way.
And let me throw in another weird, macabre detail. When I was watching coverage early on of the LA fires, I believe it was Fox News had a clip showing rubble of a house, and it was a skeleton, like a white, like Halloween skeleton, it seemed to be. And they were like, oh, we didn't mean to show that. And I was like, that is completely bogus. A skeleton, a white skeleton, only exists after a body has, decomposed for a long time. People who are burned to a char do not look like a white skeleton. I think that was completely fake, by the way. Unless microwave technology kind of strips flesh and leaves white bone, which seems
That's
weird,
correct.
but anything's possible. Does it? Is that?
Well, one of the bodies that I have a picture of, the feet are gone. Like the body is literally face down on the ground. You see the hair, you see the braids. You can see the braids of the hair. You see the fingers, the body's charred, except for the feet. The feet are white. They're kind of a skeleton. The feet are gone. The feet are gone. They're dissolved. You can't see them. But
That's
there is a
not
white
fire.
skeleton, and I think it had something to do with the ground. And I wish I would have taken a picture of this one in Maui. There was fire that was on the ground that looked like it was dancing. It was really, really weird. And at the time I didn't do a screenshot of it, and now I can't find it. But that victim, something's up with their feet. Their feet are gone. There's a white bone from their calf, and then the
Mhm.
victim above them, which again you'll see it in the book, the victim above them, same thing. The feet are gone. You see a skeleton, just a bone, a white bone, and then you see the charred body. So it's very, a Navy SEAL friend of mine said he's never seen pictures like the ones I have. He's been wanting and hoping that somebody would find these pictures. And I know somebody in LA's got something. I don't have the bodies in
Yeah.
LA, but I do have the ones in Maui.
Wow. Well, we're getting some really, really interesting comments. Lots of reaction in the in the feed. Stan Plasta says Paradise vloggers estimated 50,000 dead or missing in Maui. Oh, comma, in Maui, probably 4,000 dead. What would you say to that, Michelle?
Oh, so okay, I see it. Paradise vloggers estimated 50,000 dead missing. Yeah, that's the other thing about Paradise too. I have in the book the picture of the trees with in Paradise. Those are even worse. Those are even worse than LA and Maui because it just shows absolute trees, and the homes are white ash with all these white or these pine trees right next to them, completely intact. 4,000 people dead, probably because here's what Ellie Cochran, who's the state representative of Lahaina, she survived the fire. She grew up in Lahaina. I've interviewed her numerous times. She said there's no way it's 103 three dead. She said people in the water, if they held on to anything, they would have been blown out to sea. I have heard of people that washed up on Lahaina, or I'm sorry, Lanai, which is this island that's right across from Lahaina on Maui. I have not had anybody come forward with that information. I've heard it from different people, but I always want to make sure I get directly from the source, so I haven't put that information in. But here's the other thing with the children: 3,000 children were home. The school was out. The school was out, and there was 3,000 children that were registered in the Lahaina Luna School District. 2 weeks after the fire, there was about 448 children that re-enrolled in the Lahaina Luna School District, and a little bit over I think it was about 434 that enrolled in private school, and there was 2,025 children that didn't enroll in school. So where are they?
Where are they?
Where are they?
So that goes to a comment we've got. Well, thank you, Elizabeth Tucci apologized. She was out of line. I accept your apology. I appreciate it. Dawn Patrol says to you, does Lahaina still have buses of children missing? And I think you just answered that question, right?
Yeah, no. I know what you're talking about, the buses. I looked into that a little bit. I could not verify it, but I'm not saying it didn't happen, because here on the islands, we do have a big time missing children issue here, big time. But I couldn't find anything. I couldn't verify anything. But I do know what you're talking about. Again, I couldn't verify that.
But again, in a normal fire, even if God forbid, thousands of children were burned to death, there would be dental records, there would be remains, there would be something.
Well, here's the thing. We know that, we believe that whole families burned alive. Ellie Cochran, she was, again, the state representative. She said that a family of 10 people who was 2 blocks from where her house is, a family of 10 all died together in one house. There was also suicides of parents committing suicide that was not in the media, that was not being discussed in the media. I can't find the information now, but during the time of it, they were talking about parents literally committing suicide, a father and a mother who had 2 children, their children died. Their children died. So that's the other thing that people are saying is, where aren't the parents screaming at the rooftops? Right. We think that they died together.
Right.
But again, I mean, I counted the crosses at the memorial. There was 150 crosses that I counted, 103 deaths. But here's the other thing too: a lot of undocumented workers lived in Lahaina who worked at the hotels. So they were undocumented, and the only people that were literally counted were people that they had a first and last name of the missing person and the first and last name of the person who's giving the information. And then we have to remember that the coroner who signed the death certificate was John Pelletier, Chief John Pelletier, who was the same police chief in the Las Vegas Mandalay Bay shooting that left a lot of questions unanswered as well.
Right. Wow. Unbelievable. And used to be disgusted, tries to stay amused. Producer Brian O'Shea, we're really getting some disgusting comments. Can you go ahead and hide the X-rated vulgar ones? Let's see. The cover-up of all the dead Hawaiian kids. Can you believe it? We're talking about dead and missing Hawaiian children, and people are still trolling us. The cover-up of all the dead Hawaiian kids is remarkable. I can't believe they were able to keep that under wraps. All my Hawaiian friends are distraught and can't believe it.
And
Um,
the thing too is you have to know that the Hawaii governor, when he was first interviewed, he was asked about the children, and he said, "We have told our team to expect a lot of children deaths," and then there were only three. There were only
mhm,
three, and one lady, she found her son completely charred and intact, holding his dog, and she said that she believes God left him that way so that she would recognize him. She recognized
caught up.
that's impossible. That's impossible in a regular fire. So you're not going to
Yeah.
see, you're not going to recognize a human body.
This is so traumatizing. And Dawn Patrol says Sheriff Pelletier is obviously compromised, covered up the Mandalay operation as well. I don't know what that is. Do you know what that is, Michelle?
Yeah, the Mandalay Bay shooting. They said there was one shooter. There was people were running in all different directions, and they said every time they ran in a certain direction, there was another shooting in that area. There was a lot of questions left unanswered in that attack. That was another attack, false flag, I believe. But you have to understand is that they actually had to change laws in order for Pelletier to become the Maui police chief.
Mhm,
There was actually a law that said you had to be a resident of Maui for a year in order to be the Maui police chief, and they actually changed that law. I believe
mhm,
it was 6 months prior to Chief Pelletier coming in.
mhm,
So yeah, lots of questions with this man, as well as he was blocking the roads for
mhm,
people to get out. And at first he denied it. And then he said, yes, we had to block them because the telephone poles were down. And in a picture with the blocked roads and the people all lined up behind the police cars are standing telephone poles. There's nothing that was down. So
mhm.
he's a complete he's very much a liar.
Yeah.
And
Okay, well, we only have unfortunately 10 more minutes, and there's so much to say. Um, Kathy Garriott rightly says, what if the children were kidnapped? Where's Oprah?
yeah, Oprah's another story. She painted her house blue prior, and there's a thing with blue, you guys. And let me just say that microwave and I did a video and people are like saying, don't say blue things don't burn because people are gonna think you're crazy. But the thing is, here's the thing: blue things didn't burn. This
Hmm.
guy pulled a blue paper out of the white ash, and white ash is falling off of the paper. He pulled six different Eric West of Hawaii Real Estate pulled six t-shirts, cotton t-shirts out of the white ash. Not one singe mark, not one hole. There was my friend who actually lost her house, her stove charred on the outside, glass melted, the racks were warped, but inside her stove, bright, shiny blue, royal blue color,
Wow.
completely beautiful. Why? Is because this patent that I told you about that has a microwave free laser uses a titanium sapphire. Sapphire is the color blue,
Wow.
and the
Wow.
blue is the same wavelength as the color. So it actually, and this is I actually quote different scientists, two different scientists in my book. I quote them about talking about this, how the color blue repels the microwave frequency. It doesn't absorb the energy. It doesn't absorb it, so it doesn't burn. In
Mhm.
Los Angeles, two Mazda Miatas, exact same type of car, one on one side of the street, completely the engine block is gone. And
Mhm.
this picture is in my book. The engine block is gone. It's destroyed. The glass is melted out. Across the street, the same exact car, blue, completely intact. It looks like you can drive it away, as well
Right.
as a blue trash can leaning on it. Nothing's wrong with it. Nothing's melted. Nothing. So
Right.
it is a
Amazing. Amazing. I'll speak to that in just a minute. We have a little technical issue going on. Brian, I don't know if you can hear me, but you've got to block or report Sushi Gang, please, because I'm literally being sexually harassed while we're videotaping, and I don't appreciate it. If you were in the room, you wouldn't do this to me. She's trolling all MAGA, or okay.
mm.
How do
And
we block her? Can you hear what Brian is saying? Brian's trolling her back.
And that's what's going to happen too, because we're over the target. We're over the target. Like I got one of my videos taken down off of YouTube because we're just right over the target.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Brian is saying he's got 6 brothers. Maybe one will date her and it'll make her feel better.
And we don't even know if that's a woman. That could be a guy, you know.
It could be AI, sweetheart.
Let's
move on. Glad you're covering this. These are very strange times. Please ignore the trolls. You know, I will, but my nerves are this frayed, and we're talking about something so important. And this, I just want to say, this is what women live with. Like, we are talking about life and death, and people are talking about my breasts and saying that Naomi Klein and I should make a porn video, right? So I'm just highlighting this and speaking to it because women live with this every day of their lives, and it destroys resources for the whole community, because this is a podcast for the whole community. So, Brian, will you just kind of make an appearance so that, you know, I don't know, there's something we can do with Sushi Gang, because I don't know how to silence it.
You can't really, because it's coming through your YouTube. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
It's coming through your YouTube, and it's Sushi Gang, Sushi whatever. It's, you know, probably part of the 50-cent army. They're like in prison in China, and they get paid like 50 cents a tweet. You gotta block them from your channel.
Well, all right, thank you for that. So I will try to ignore.
And to be fair, she's probably 13 years old and stupid, so I think there's not a lot you can do.
Yeah. All right, moving right along. We're not going to troll back, darling, but
I'll troll back. Nice to meet you, by the way, guys.
This is my husband.
Nice to meet you. Aloha.
Also, just to put it out there, he's also my bodyguard and my security consultant.
Nice.
And I met him when I was getting death threats.
That's ineffective against trolls online.
It's not effective against trolls, but I just want a little, you know, I want to put a little of your mystique out there so they know they can't harass.
Oh, no, I could put a shot through their eyes at 3 meters. I mean, if they show up here, that's fine.
All right, let's go back. Thank you, sweetheart. You can sign off now. And thank you. And so let's see. I think, so this is really important. I'm sure you'll have a lot to say about this. Rick, lots of numbers, says, I think these, quote, wildfires are more like demolition projects.
That's
now,
right.
Who makes all the money from the cleanup and rebuilding? So let's move like through your last points about the LA fires and speak to this. I'm sure this is part of your remaining points.
You're absolutely right about that. You have to look at the contracts, but most importantly, every single one, Maui, LA, Myrtle Beach, all set to be smart cities. And that's, when you look at that, you look at who gains from this: the renewable energy companies and the electric companies. They need us to believe in climate change. You guys, they need us to believe in climate change. And if you go to World Declaration, I think it's .org, or just put in World Declaration in the URL, and what'll pop up is this, it's a World Declaration that was signed by 1,977 credentialed scientists from around the world, stating that there's no climate danger. There's climate change happening all the time. They had to change global warming into climate change because the earth is actually cooling now. And this is by
I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh.
I know it's crazy, because Dr. David Dilley, who has 50 years, he's a 50-year meteorologist, he for the US Navy, huge credentials, talked about the Milankovitch cycle, stating that the earth was closer to the sun 8,000 years ago. We're in a cooling phase, but they couldn't just say, oh, now we're cooling. And also the documentary by Al Gore, An Inconvenient Truth. There was a teacher in England that actually sued because they were trying to force him to show that documentary to his students, and he said this is not true. A judge in Great Britain actually found 9 different problems with that documentary because it's not true. And they need us to believe in climate change. Right. They need to take out all of these places for to rebuild these
Right.
renewable energy. And who owns these renewable? Who has the most stake? BlackRock and Vanguard. Who owns most of the stock in BlackRock and Vanguard? These banking elite families that
Right.
run this country, and they've run this country since the Civil War. So this is all what's going down, and that's why I always tell people, have a to-go bag in your car, food, supplies, and then tell your family, give them an emergency action plan. If anything happens, we're going to meet here. So that's a really, really good idea for it, because I don't know how we're going to stop this right now,
Right.
other than just your podcast and getting the word out.
Right. Wow. Well, I'm just validating what you just said. I was actually just talking to Brian about this morning in relation to Ukraine, and his view is that BlackRock went in prior to the Ukraine war, kind of facilitated the war, and they already have plans for the rare earth minerals underneath what used to be cities, villages, homes, schools, etc. So they have to like destroy, and then you think about Gaza. But
yeah.
So back to the 15-minute cities, Maui, LA, and now let's talk about the Carolinas. I mean, I'm really scared. I'm here in Brooklyn. I assume New York is on the list to be a 15-minute city. So are you saying, and Myrtle Beach is on the list to be a 15-minute city? Good God.
Yep. Myrtle Beach,
So,
Greenville, and Columbia, South Carolina.
oh my goodness.
Yeah. Yeah. And so so these are the poster children for these smart cities. But what is also happening is your general plan, because I live on the Big Island, and our general plan 2045 has smart city, 15-minute city, not technology, but in our general plan, they want to make most of Big Island conservation and then nature. They want to take
Right.
people out. And
Yes.
yes, it's
Right.
disgusting we've been trying to fight this for 8 months. So these attacks, when they are attacks, you guys, on the American people, but there is also an attack coming through your general plan. So highly recommend that you look at your general plan. All you got to do is put in the name of your city and put general plan afterwards, and then open up the PDF, click edit, and put in clustered housing, put in acquire, acquisition. Because one of the things in our general plan, it states that if you own property and you go to the planning department to have anything changed or added, they're going to inventory your property for possible acquisition. That's literally stated in our general plan. So this is what's coming. It's people they can look and go, oh, that doesn't apply to me. It does apply to you, and it's going to come through your general plan.
Wow. Well, that's very good advice. We only have a few minutes left. Are there any of your other critical points that you want to raise? And I have to ask, are you seeing any of the same anomalies? I know it's early days yet. The fire's still raging in the Carolinas that you saw in LA and in Maui, Michelle.
Yes, it's the weather. It's the weather. They have been messing with our weather, you guys, for a very long time. They can create wind. There's actually and they can also move tornadoes. It's like, how in the world does a Category 4 hurricane go inland and sit right on top of Asheville, like South Carolina? How does that happen? That doesn't happen normal. That's not normal. There's actually a U.S. patent. You can look it up. Look up a patent that says tornado control device, and you will see it. It sits right there. It's right in our face. They can control the weather. So the weather, the drought, also the fact that the rain, it was like so much rain months prior, and that creates more vegetation, then a drought, which creates kindling, but it's super. That's the whole point. That's the whole point.
Gosh. So you're suggesting that the flooding in the Carolinas was anticipatory of the wildfires, anticipatory of the 15-minute cities. Is that the
Absolutely. 100%. They have this technology. They have, if you just look up weather modification patents, look that up in your URL, and you will see a ton. There's going to be there's a free patent website.
I've looked into it. You're absolutely right. There is. I mean, this particular technology that dissolves structures, I don't know what that is yet. I know that actually, Brian, am I allowed to say this, honey? You described in the military a test of a device, a laser that kind of evaporated animals, and I'm sure, well, directed energy weapons, we know about that. Okay, just for the record, I'm not a CIA asset and I'm not being blackmailed. I just need to say that because people just make things up. So
I'll put my Great Maui Land Grab book
yes,
into the website. You guys can landgrabbook.com. That's the website for that. And if you put in
right,
truth in the
right.
coupon code, you'll get 10% off. And what the most part I love about my book is that it shares who owns America.
Yeah.
So people care, okay, what happened with Maui, but then who owns America and why is this happening? And this is what all Americans need to know, that we do not live in the land of the free, home of the brave. This is not the United States of America. This is the United States corporation funded and controlled by the US bankers since the Civil War, because they funded both sides of the war. And then after that, the country was bankrupt and the country literally was collateralized and given to the US bankers. Then in 1913, the Federal Reserve, which is not part of the government,
Right.
it's actually owned by these bankers. All of it, you guys. So if you get my book, share it, share it,
Yeah.
because people who, the normies, I think that what'll happen is they'll want to know what happened with Maui, and they'll start to open up and crack the spell, because I think people are under a spell and hypnotized, especially with that television and the media and all of that. There's actually a frequency that creates a hypno system in the brain that changes people's opens people up to hypno suggestion.
Suggestion.
Yes.
I'm sure you're right. And that could be a whole new book. Just before you go, Kathy Garriott says Greenville shocked emoji. That's me. And I'm disturbed too. Phil Hendrickson says they're doing biological warfare right now. Chemtrails spreading viruses everywhere. Fake fog. Elizabeth Kerr. Elizabeth Tucci said fake snow. And
That's right.
And yeah, we're definitely seeing very, very bizarre weather that we've never seen before, and these catastrophic fires. Just before you go, what can people do? I mean, you've shared such a sobering, disturbing set of facts, very persuasive. How do I'm thinking about my home upstate, or just being here in Brooklyn. How do we protect ourselves?
It's, you know what? It's by creating a stronger relationship, or a relationship with your higher power, because this is another thing too. I feel these are satanic demons. I think the best thing the devil did was to have people believe he does not exist. But there is a frequency in our bodies, and it's connected, especially being a woman. You have an intuition that is connected to a higher divine infinite frequency of truth and of love. This empty space isn't empty. This is a frequency field, and our hearts are connected to a higher power. So it's connecting to that higher power and asking, what is going to keep me and my family safe? What do I need to do? And then follow your guided intuition. We all need to go back to create a relationship with a higher power. I don't care if you call it God or Jesus or whatever. I call it infinite creator of source of love, because it's beating my heart and breathing my body. And I follow that guided intuition. That guided intuition wrote this book. I was up till midnight. I was up at 3 a.m. and I just couldn't stop. And I knew what was next. And that wasn't coming from my head. That was coming from my heart. And that is what we need to be doing, is create a relationship with your higher power. Start to trust your guided intuition. This is why they want us in fear, because when we are in fear, we are not connected to our heart. We are connected to something that's trying to get us out of fear. We want out of fear. Connect with your heart and trust your guided intuition. Trust your intuition.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you, Michelle Melendez. I'm so glad you were persistent and reached out a second time. You're welcome anytime you've got something new to report, and the pieces you're putting together are so important. So again, find Michelle's book at
Great Maui Land Grab Book.com. You can get it on Amazon, but it's cheaper on my website, greatmauilandgrabbook.com. Put truth, TRUTH, in the coupon code, get 10% off, and then share it, you guys, because the more people that know what's going on, I feel that there's going to be a shift, and then creating that higher power, that relationship with your higher power.
Thank God. Well, thank you for being a truth teller. I'm really grateful to you. Have a lovely rest of your day. Do I say mahalo as a goodbye as well as a hello?
Aloha is a good goodbye and hello, and mahalo is thank you. So mahalo nui
Right,
loa
well,
to you. Thank you
mahalo
very much.
and aloha. All right. Thank you, Michelle
All
Melendez.
right.
Take care.
Aloha, everyone.
All right. I'm going to say goodbye to you, and then I'm going to invite Brian O'Shea to the studio. Come on and join me, darling. We're going to have a second episode in this live stream. This is the wonderful Brian O'Shea, and I've asked him to join us for this second part of this podcast from the exotic distance of the next room. Because obviously, since we last were on camera together, and of course, he has his own podcast called Investigate Everything on the network Daily Cloud. But Brian is also, for those of you who don't know him, most of his career in military intelligence, then in the intelligence community, embedded with special forces, signals intelligence. And then I met him, as I mentioned when I was ranting a moment ago. I met him when I was getting death threats in 2014. He was a security consultant and made my stalkers go away. And we dated 6 months later and have been married. We've been together for 10 years. So God's got a sense of humor. It all ended happily. Something that started out in a very scary way turned out to be a blessing. But Brian has this incredibly rich, I'm just picking up the dog who wants to be part of the family. Brian has incredibly rich, kind of unbelievably rich background in geopolitics. And since we were last together with all of you, there has been the Zelensky meltdown on camera at the White House with President Trump and J.D. Vance, the vice president. Those of you who haven't seen the full video, not the excerpts, you really should. Darling, can we get rid of this comment under us, because we're changing subjects now.
And while I'm doing that, can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you fine.
Okay, great. And just go ahead and click on your comments so you don't have to look at the comments.
I don't know how to do it.
That's fine. I'll take care of it.
All right. Thank you, sweetheart. But I wanted you to talk about first, what are the issues that were raised for you dramatically by Zelensky and Europe's reaction?
Well, I mean, the issues are vast. I'm going to cover those on my show tonight at 8 o'clock. Find it on Rumble or wherever else you watch these. The biggest issue that I saw with it was, I think, I do believe that there was no mineral deal to begin with. And I base this off the fact that Starmer, the Prime Minister of UK, he signed a 100-year mineral deal with Zelensky just on the 17th of January. So it seems like Zelensky's peddling whatever he can to whomever he can to get some backing, because he's essentially screwed at this point. That was a big issue I saw right there. And obviously, if I knew, the White House knew. And I think they gave him enough rope to figuratively hang himself with in that press conference.
Just jumping in, sweetheart. What's wrong with that? Like, why shouldn't he sell his minerals to America and to Britain if there are enough minerals? Or is the kind of thing that you need one exploiter, one country alone?
Well, there's nothing really wrong with that, except that after the blow up, or whatever you want to call it, if you give me a second, I just want to close the door so we can get rid of that echo. Do you mind?
Yeah, go ahead. And I'll just update people who may not know what we're referring to. So during the Zelensky encounter, there was the reason Zelensky actually ostensibly came to the White House was to sign an agreement that had been agreed to already by both Zelensky and the president to in exchange for security activities from the White House, more money, more weapons, maybe even more personnel. Zelensky would allow President Trump to exploit the rare earth under the Ukraine. And it's Brian's fascinating theory that this whole war was precipitated because of the rare earth, that BlackRock wants the rare earth. Darling, I don't know if you heard what I was just saying, but I was saying, it's your theory that the whole war is predicated on the rare earth from the very beginning, and that's what BlackRock wanted. And as I just said in my interview with Michelle Melendez, your theory was that the war exists to clear out, and for one reason, to clear out all the houses, buildings, schools, infrastructure that is sitting on top of the rare earth. And then you were saying Zelensky's already made a deal for the rare earth with other countries, with Britain. And I was saying, what's wrong with that?
Well, I don't think. Let me take those one at a time. I don't think it's because the entire war was predicated on the rare earths. I believe that it's predicated on a lot of things. So first of all, that region's been in conflict forever, and it's always been kind of a regional conflict. They went at it in 2014. Before that, over and over. The key thing with Ukraine geographically is its access to the Black Sea, and it's also a buffer state for, between the Russia and NATO. And keep in mind, as a sidebar, that I've done work in Russia, I've done work in Ukraine, and the Russians are as scared of NATO as NATO's pretending to be of the Russians, and they always have been. And so, what really got things fired up over a decade ago is when they made the Estonia and Lithuania and the other Balkan, when
Baltic.
they made them
Baltic, darling.
Sorry,
I just got corrected.
When they made them part of NATO, that was a direct violation of an agreement that Putin had with the United States and NATO some time ago. So that really precipitated it. But keep in mind that the shelling was going back and forth across the borders back in 2021. And this is evidenced by an FAA airspace closure report over the area back in April of 2021. I can't call it on my screen, but I'll put it in the description. So there's a million reasons. That's one of those countries that there's a lot going on there, from our bioweapons labs to the access. There's a lot going on there. And then the next part you had.
The next part is, well, what jumped out at you from the exchange at the White House?
Okay, yeah. So a big body language thing. Zelensky went in there. Clearly, someone had steered him wrong. It could have been those senators in the breakfast he had that morning telling him to maybe be tough.
And just fill in a bit, darling. Which senators? What breakfast?
Oh, well, there was a big breakfast of mainly Democratic and a lot of Rhino senators, our senators. When he got to Washington, Zelensky got to Washington, D.C., and they were all like, praising him, and he's made to feel like a king. And then he walks in and he starts negotiating, he starts litigating in front of the press.
With Trump, sitting with Trump and J.D. Vance, right?
Yeah, so later on, they're having this meeting. Now, backing up, you have to understand that these phone calls between the White House and Ukraine have been going back and forth for a couple of weeks now. Coming to this point, his only task that day was to go sign that mineral deal. That was his only job.
Right.
And that's all he had to do. He could turn around and say, you know what, deal's off the table, at another time, let's meet in private. But it's a big risk he took trying to, litigate this in front of the media, Zelensky.
Do you think he was provoked into doing that? Do you think he didn't intend to?
Yeah, I mean, I think President Trump and J.D. Vance were going to use that event to let the American people see what Zelensky really is all about, and I think they succeeded in that. I think he took the bait. And I'm a big Trump supporter, so I thought that was brilliant. But Zelensky also has been kind of skipping around, feeling pretty puffed out in his chest because of the EU and the UK having his back. Now, that to me is pretty indicative of someone who doesn't really understand his allies that well.
What do you mean?
Well, let's take I don't want to give away too much from tonight's show, but let's take the UK for instance. Now, Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, has said, "We've got your back." Zelensky went right to Keir Starmer after the meeting. That's the first place he flew to. He got his photo op with the king, and he's like, "We got your back. We're going to send you more money, and we're going to send troops on the ground if necessary." That's what Keir Starmer said.
Right.
Here's the problem. The economy of the UK is in shambles, mainly because of like DEI programs. And they have taken from defense spending, the UK, to fund these programs. So the UK over the last few years have suffered in their readiness capability. And this has been an ongoing thing. They just had in the UK, the government just ordered a review of defense readiness of the UK military, and it fell short by miles. So
oh no,
it's kind of like if I got into a fight with if I got into a fight with Mike Tyson and then my 90-pound buddy said, "Hey bro, I got your back." It's not, thanks. So that's the thing. And Germany's still not committing to troops. Poland is still not committing to troops.
Wow.
But the UK is fixated on it to the point where, and you and I were just in the UK last week, so I dove into this hard, and I was talking to people on the street about it even. They want to start conscription of troops to go fight in Ukraine. The problem is no one's going to go fight for the UK government, especially for Ukraine, because so many of the eligible people, which are not as many as you think, don't even consider themselves British. They're immigrants.
Whoa. Well, don't they have to go if they're conscripted, whether they consider themselves British or not?
Well, there's technically yes, but there's this whole you have this problem. There's a lot of people that can go to Wales or go to Ireland, right? And now, Ireland's part of the EU, so they can't really drag them out of Ireland. But there's also the thing of how do you identify them? How do you? The UK government is talking that they will still honor things like mental health as a reason to not get conscripted. So I can imagine there's going to be a lot of mental health issues popping up for the people feeling forced to. 60% of the UK population, according to an op-ed I read by one of their colonels, one of the UK's colonels in the Daily Mail, 60% of the eligible population of the UK is overweight. So right now, the UK does not have barely enough people to really defend their own territories and themselves. So this whole thing of sending troops over, those, God forbid, if there's a shot fired, those troops that they send over will become cannon fodder. I mean, because they'll expedite the training. It takes at least 5 months to make someone a viable soldier, at least. And that's a real problem. And I think the UK people who are eligible, and eligibility right now is 18 to 35 would be the primary, men and women. They're not going to go. That's what I see happening here. They're just not going to go. And I have the highest respect for the UK military. I've worked with them, some of the finest special forces on the planet. But when you just don't have the numbers, you just don't have the numbers.
Whoa. Well, this is, a shocking kind of, it's almost like President Trump, by withdrawing the money, pulled a rug over a festering hole full of maggots that is Europe and Europe's military readiness, because it's like they thought this day would never come, right? They're so unprepared. There's like no plan B. And it just makes me angry as an American, feeling like, and we had this feeling when we were in Europe and in Britain, like they didn't think the gravy train would ever stop arriving in, Disney Europe and Disney UK. And I love Europe and I love Britain, love, love, love. But it's so ironic. I'm reading this book right now, as you know, darling, Ray Strong's The Story of Britain. And Europe's been fighting its own battles. Britain's been fighting its own battles for as long as there's been recorded history in Europe and in Britain. And it's anomalous that after World War II, because of a very unusual situation of, Britain in ruins to some extent, but Europe in ruins, the Marshall Plan, this vigorous post-war American economy, we said, okay, we'll take care of a disproportionate amount of defending Europe. And that's just lasted for decades and decades. And you and I were very struck when we were in Britain. And I know people are suffering in Britain to some extent in Europe, but compared with America, it's so luxe, right now. It's like people have this image of America being this fat, rich adolescent, with more money that knows what to do with. So why not defend your allies? But they don't have an image, and a lot of their picture of America is from Hollywood. They don't have an image of people working 3 jobs or vast tents of the homeless in our cities, or
No, they don't.
Kids with asthma and diabetes from a bad food supply, not enough medicine, our infrastructure crumbling. They don't see the real America. They don't absorb that we're in debt and we're going to go bankrupt if we don't get a grip on our spending. And so it was surreal for you and me to be in a Baltic country that I'm not going to name out of respect for.
Wait, you said UK earlier. You mean
and
Lithuania?
UK. I didn't want to single out Lithuania because of our host, but
that's okay.
Okay, a Baltic country and the United Kingdom that and even Brussels, which we passed through in Denmark, people compared to America, people are living so well. Compared to America, people are so well dressed, well fed, healthy. The infrastructure is first rate. The schools are excellent.
Can I speak on that really quickly? Sorry. I'm sorry. To your point, that was really, I found frustrating to see people walking around in all the countries we went to, sipping coffee, having wonderful pastries on a Wednesday,
right,
and doing the thing that most Americans will work, an extra job to save up to have that week-long vacation.
Right.
And they're complaining that we're cutting off money. But in some of these countries, what we're seeing is that the majority of the GDP comes from NGOs, which are funded by the USAID.
Right. No, absolutely. You and I, we weren't eavesdropping, but we overheard many conversations of businessmen in particular bitching that, there would be tariffs, and bitching that it was going to be bad for Europe, but not giving any thought to the fact that we're not Europe. It might be good for the United States. And they weren't doing it like, wow, this is really unfortunate, the situation has changed. They were doing it like, I think the thing that made us so frustrated, I don't want to speak for you, was they weren't just complaining. They were complaining like an entitled, affluent 17-year-old who's told that they cannot have a car before their 18th birthday, right? Right? I mean, it was just like, what do you mean I don't get everything I want from the great, tap that I turn to get unlimited euros, which is called the United States of America?
Well, Naomi, I would say it's almost a like this kind of socialist attitude permeates everything, every opinion, where like, you have more money, of course you should be sharing it with everyone else.
But we don't have more money right now.
Well, here, keep this in mind. Think of all the hotels, right? What's on TV? What do you have access to? You have access to Eurovision, BBC, 1 through 17, and CNN,
right?
In those type of venues. So that's what they're seeing, and all they see is scenes of Manhattan at Christmas and things. They're not even covering hurricanes over there, and why the wildfires. They cover rich people getting interviewed. That's it.
I mean, all that, I totally agree with you. All that being true, it's still not their money, right? Even if they thought those Americans are so rich, they should give us all their money, right? It's not their money. And why should I think about how militarized our society is? I think about you, honey, as a veteran. A lot of Americans join the military for a lot of reasons. Many of them that I know join because they can't afford to go to college. Also because they want to serve their country. Also because otherwise they can't afford training for the profession that they want to be in. I'm sure you can add a million other reasons that the soldiers.
All I know is I really just wanted to kill somebody.
Okay. Duly
That's a
noted.
Stripes reference for all of you movie buffs out there.
Okay, duly noted. But my point is, it's a heavily militarized society, and interestingly, that really does something to the United States, right? The thread of veterans throughout our society, I think, really gives us a lot of things, which I haven't teased out yet. But in Britain, it's so striking. They demilitarize their societies because they don't have to militarize because we're doing it for them, right? Or Needham's doing it.
That is the shocking thing. That's a shocking thing. Sorry to jump in.
No, go rant, go.
So what I've noticed is, like, in all the militaries I've worked with 47 different militaries because I was in 2 special forces units. So one of our main missions was called FID, which is Foreign Internal Defense. So we train other militaries. What was striking to me, it was the countries like Thailand, even South Korea, Philippines, even Australia. The military is a really big deal, and
Right.
it's all the times. Now, granted, we spent a lot of time in Oxford, but you just don't see the, at least in the cities, you just don't see this kind of patriotism that normally forms behind
Right,
soldiers,
right,
except in Lithuania.
right,
They're pretty proud of their military, and they seem more proud of their military than anything else.
right.
Um, but they made a deal with the NGO devil, and they're kind of addicted to that free money.
Well, so what I've really been thinking about, sweetheart, reading this book, The Story of Britain, is in the whole history, 800 years of British history, when in Europe as well, when there were wars to fight, the treasury would be emptied and the king would be weakened because it's
Mm-hmm.
so expensive to pay soldiers and arm them and send them out to fight a war. But when there was peace, that's when and stability, that's when the country would be rich and the king would be rich and the treasury would be replenished. So I mention this because looking around at Western Europe, they've had 70 years to replenish their treasuries, and we haven't. We've emptied our treasury. And it's so clear, like all the money they're not spending on defense, the museums, the free education, the free healthcare, just the beauty of everything, right? And this sign of luxury, so many women staying home with their children, which costs a fortune, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
many moms in America would love to stay home with their children and can't afford to. It's just so striking to me that they've had peace and prosperity for 70 years because we're shouldering the burden of the chunk of their budgets that would otherwise go to the military. Very, very striking. Let me add one more thing about this culturally. Now that Starmer is trying to say, oh, it's fine, we're going to have, we're just going to conscript all of you. You can't really have it both ways, right, honey, in terms of drumming up an army. What I mean is you can't really have globalization, which says borders don't matter, nations don't matter. You're going to offend
Exactly.
people if you fly the Union Jack. You can't say it's Christmas. You have to say winter market because you don't want to offend the Muslim people. Huge plantations of immigrants, plantations, they use that word, in Ireland, in barracks, in camps. It doesn't matter, rip up our national symbols. Like you and I were very struck when we arrived in here that there are no symbols of Britain when we arrived. It's almost zero. No flag, no, the garden of Busby outside of the palace, no Paddington Bear, no tea, no scones, no Britain, no great writers, no Shakespeare, literally nothing. And it's being scrubbed from other European countries as well. Like national identity is being scrubbed. My point is, you can't really spend 10 or 15 years, I would say since Tony Blair, diluting national identity in Britain very intentionally, and then say, oh, patriotism time to send your son or daughter to fight a war in, the Ukraine, for this country that we've told you doesn't really exist and that you can't really be patriotic about. What would you say to that?
That leads into my point perfectly. So, and I'm going to use someone else's words. So this is who I was talking about. This is from I love the Daily Mail, by the way. When I'm over there, I love it. It's the best paper, and it's good for news for air flight. But yeah, this Colonel Richard Kemp, he was a big commander, and he's talking about, the article is how Britain would go about bringing back conscription with women and asylum seekers called up, but no Gen Z snowflakes. Right away, the title's not going to help anyone, because I wouldn't let my kids go as American soldiers. Until the military is fixed, I would encourage my kids not even to go into our military until it gets. Now I would, with Hegseth in charge, but over the last 4 years, no way. And that's coming from a guy who spent 11 very happy years in the military.
Mhm.
But what's the way they're going about it, the UK, it's all wrong. So, and it's more than 10 or 15 years eroding their patriotism. Listen to this, what this guy says. He says, um, above everything else, the most important part of any conscription program is its perceived legitimacy. Conscription relies on winning hearts and minds. And he goes into something that happened with Oxford, and then, but he goes on to say how when he was in school, like since the 70s, they've been eroding people's faith in their country, and how colonialism is bad and evil, and the UK is bad and evil. That's happening over there too. But listen to this. This is shocking. And listen to the approach, because the approach is shocking and it might sound familiar. A poll this month found that only 41% of Gen Z were proud to be British,
Oh
but
God.
only 11% were prepared to fight for their country.
Well, they go together,
11%.
right? If you propagandize kids, and our kids too, into being ashamed of their country, and you can do that by cherry picking any nation's history, right, and only focusing on what's bad about it, why would they fight and serve?
And plus, you've been telling them that co- you know colonizing people, which is done at the point of a bayonet historically, is those are evil people that do that. Now they want them to don that uniform and that bayonet and be those people in their minds.
Right.
So how do you this is horrible. He says, oh yeah, then all aged between 18 and 27 said they would take up arms only if they agreed with the reasons. And this always pisses off older generations. So how do you convince people to fight for a country they don't believe in?
Oh my God.
I was liking this guy's article till this last part here. The government would engage in a number of multimedia and advertising agencies,
Propaganda.
engage a number of multimedia and advertising agencies to pump out information across new media platforms, including TikTok
Oh my God.
and Instagram, while hiring well-known faces from the
Influencers.
worlds of entertainment and sport to spread and share their message. They would also have to deploy thousands of online monitors to take down propaganda and disinformation spread by legions of Russian bots intent on sowing division and misinformation. Well, that's ridiculous. Obviously, they always blame Russian bots, but he just said 3 paragraphs ago that it's the culture that's the problem. That's where the division is.
Right.
And the division is between the young people and the elites who are ruling that country. And then I'll say this final thing. What people, and I didn't know much about Starmer before our trip, but what people have to remember is that they had Brexit. What was that, in like 2014, 15?
I don't remember.
So what happened was, Brexit, for those that don't know, is the UK left the EU. Okay, and that's Brexit, and that was a huge thing. There were people arguing in pubs. We were there. It was crazy. Right. But what's the majority of the UK people are still, they love their sovereignty. They love being British. They love being the UK, and they're really getting screwed by the EU. Well, what Starmer's been doing, while he's telling people he's going to want people to be patriotic, Well, what he's been doing is signing deals with the EU. Like one in particular that he signed 2 weeks ago was to submit to the EU's food safety
Oh my
regulations.
gosh.
So basically, the EU will dictate how the UK eats.
Oh my gosh.
And he's also getting ready to submit to something. Get ready for this one. Despite their illegal alien problems over there in the UK, they've got too many of them by their own admission.
Hmm.
Um, he's submitting to something called a worker exchange program with the EU, which
Hmm.
lets unlimited numbers of workers come through and
Unbelievable.
work in the UK on that program. So, how
Unbelievable.
can they be patriotic when their own leader is
Right.
selling them out to a globalist ideal?
Right. Which was predictable.
Yeah.
Ugh, what a mess. I just feel it's important to note here that I think in 2014, I went, yeah, it was 2014. I'm going to hold Loki because he wants to be part of this. Um, I went to Glasgow because Daily Clout was examining um, the referendum about Scotland leaving the United Kingdom. And the reason I'm bringing this up is, the fact that Starmer is really no different from any other globalist you could choose isn't surprising, because Britain has a huge problem, and I hope there are British people watching, with their electoral system. And we confirmed it. Basically, there's no way to verify that their votes are being counted correctly. There was a huge amount of fraud and blank ballots in the Scottish referendum, and we had a spreadsheet of 400 eyewitnesses with their blank ballots, their photographs of blank ballots, meaning not valid, and they were all in precincts that would have voted yes to leave the EU. But when we investigated, well, what do you do if there's an anomaly or some problems with the election? The voters were told to go to their police. The police told them to go to the council. The council told them to go to the Electoral Commission, which is a UK government entity which works for the United Kingdom government, from which people were trying to secede. And the Electoral Commission told them to go to the police. So it was a complete circle, and there was no way to verify the vote. People were told it would cost £25,000 to file a request for judicial review. Basically, I guess what I'm trying to say is, going back to at least 2014, probably earlier, you guys have no idea who actually won your elections, just like we don't know until, going back to 2005, who actually won our elections because of our digital technology here. I'm just putting that out there because among the things British people need to do to get their country back, they need to change the electoral system to have paper ballots, local counting, get rid of the Electoral Commission, and have accountability for their electoral system. Well, let's go to something else really interesting that you said, honey, about Black Rock and about Starmer and the pensions. And this is going to make British listeners' heads explode. What was it you told me about Starmer and the pensions and their relationship to Ukraine?
Yes. And by the way, we love the UK. We love the UK people. You guys have the same problems we have with our politicians, and we're with you. So I haven't confirmed it yet, but I was sitting there beating my head against the wall, saying, "What is Starmer thinking? Like, why is he over delivering? I mean, over promising when he's doomed to under deliver on these promises?
Mhm.
Like, what is his focus on getting boots on the ground? Boots on
Yeah.
the
What
ground.
is that?
Well, as it turns out, there's a lot of these countries, the UK included, who have invested in the redevelopment of Ukraine going back to 2022.
Oh my gosh.
Uh, right, right around the time the bombs started falling, even though, as you recall, we couldn't see them on the news for some reason. And so what I found was a bunch of these British based funds who have hundreds of billions of their investors' dollars invested in these redevelopment programs for
Mm,
when Ukraine is flattened and they rebuild these like smart cities and all this stuff.
mm.
Um, well, it appears, and I have to confirm it, but this one fund I found, it appears that they have local and like provincial level government pensions in the UK are invested in the redevelopment. Well, guess
Oh
what?
my God.
if the whole country doesn't get leveled, thus calling for redevelopment, there goes your money.
Oh my God. They have to destroy the rest of what's left standing in Ukraine to justify the redevelopment, which is the only way the pension funds in Britain are going to pay out for the elderly who have worked all their lives in Britain. Is that what you're saying, sweetheart?
Yeah, and not only that, the only way that the Ukrainian government can make good on a lot of these investments, which have flown right to them, is through precious minerals and probably pay back investors with our money, I'm guessing. Um, but yeah, it's just like that's the thing. The whole thing is based on
It's a Ponzi scheme.
total Ponzi scheme.
Oh my God. So if Trump didn't come through with billions, which he didn't, that was Starmer's and Zelensky's only chance, Starmer to not have the pensions of the elderly collapse riding
I
in
mean,
the
I can't say the elderly, but yeah, pensions.
pensions, right? Pensions collapsing. And Zelensky, what does Zelensky face if he doesn't get the money from, which he's not, from Trump?
Well, what he faces is utter defeat. Possibly, you might see him fleeing the country because he can't pay back the investors.
Which
And
investors?
oh, everyone from
Oh, the
BlackRock
globalist investors.
to the globalist investors, France, everyone. And I think even Turkey has some investment in there because what would have worked out perfect for Starmer, let's just stick with him, is getting boots on the ground to secure things like mines and assets and things like that. That's the whole point of that.
Mm-hmm.
Russia is not going to care if we get some British troops on as peacekeepers.
Mm-hmm.
And that also lets them physically secure their investment and get something out of that, at least hedge. But see, then it got complicated when Trump started throwing the mineral deal around. So the UK was like, you notice the UK wasn't really saying, hey, give Ukraine a security agreement, United States, that involves boots on the ground. What the UK was saying was give them a security agreement, give them security, what do you call them, guarantees.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was this one exchange with Starmer and President Trump, where he said, "Well, it'd be our troops," and Trump's like, "Well, we could get to that," but he was insistent that it's their troops on the ground, the UK troops. Now it gets complicated because Turkey, out of the blue, has said, "Hey, you know what? We'll send some troops over there."
Wait, sweetheart, I'm still not understanding. How does it benefit Starmer to send troops? I mean, I get to have the war continue so he can level the rest of the Ukrainian buildings that are standing so he can make good on the pensioners' investments. But why would he not be angling to get other countries to send troops, boots on the ground?
Well, he's angling. They're just not doing it, and they probably don't have as much at stake as he does. So why would he do it? Well, that would indicate that Zelensky has some leverage over him. Well, of course he does, because all Zelensky has to do is nationalize these projects, and then all that investor money is gone.
Oh my goodness!
And I'm guessing that's the threat.
Wow. Why would anyone have invested in Ukraine if there was that vulnerability that Zelensky could just say, sorry, it's nationalized?
Well, first of all, I don't think anyone expected Trump to get back into the White House. I think that's the biggest reason.
Right.
So there are guarantees made, whether Kamala's in the White House, whether Houseplant Biden is in the White House, it didn't matter to them. He's doing whatever they say.
Right.
Or she is. So it didn't matter either way.
Right.
And then you also have a very weak House leadership in Johnson, where he tends to, the Republican Speaker Johnson, who tends to keep passing these continued resolutions that fund the hell out of Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
And that keeps that gravy train rolling.
Oh my gosh, how cynical. Yeah. So
I've got the receipts too.
No, I believe you always have the receipt. Yeah. I'm just trying to process what you're saying. So do you think that's why they tried to assassinate President Trump at least twice before he even was elected?
Well, that and many other things. But yes, he's bad for investment in across so many industries, because what does the military industrial complex, ours and theirs, what do they make money on is war.
Mhm.
Okay, so he's bad for that. Remember the uproar that everyone had, the rhinos or Republicans in name only, and our own Democrats, when President Trump wanted to pull the troops out of Germany that had been there for decades.
Right.
It was an uproar. You're going to leave us exposed, and all that. So that's bad for business. And then also
You mean for the
Ukraine.
defense industry?
What's up?
The defense industry?
Yeah, the defense industry, that's one of them, but also construction, off-highway equipment, things like Caterpillar, John Deere, Sony. I mean, name
Right.
whatever construction equipment company you want. So they all get contracts. So if there's a rebuilding, you're going to have massive contracts for companies like Caterpillar, and you're also reclaiming land.
Right.
There's also the infrastructure people. Then don't forget the lobbyists. There's one called, you're like this, who's at the tip of the spear on a lot of these deals is called Arendt Fox LLP.
Aren't Fox?
I'm not making it up.
It's funny.
It's
Yeah, I believe
they popped up on Laura Ingram's show,
you.
and they have been there on the ground before bullets flew in Syria, in Libya,
Oh my
in
goodness.
Ukraine.
Angel of death.
And actually, the lawyer who was on, who blocked me the minute I tweeted that, within minutes he blocked me. He's married to a Ukrainian beauty queen, and he had Anthony Fauci at his wedding.
Mm-hmm.
So
Oh wow!
it's all
Oh
one big
wow!
gang. All one big gang.
Oh,
and let's not forget also, we do have weapons labs in Ukraine.
Weapons labs? You mean bioweapon labs?
Biological weapons labs. And
talk about that. What's the point of that?
Well, I mean, to make biological weapons off the grid and not in a NATO country. So, and it's also, there were rumors, and they're just rumors, but a lot of captured Russian soldiers were subject to some of these tests.
Oh.
And I can't verify that, but the thing is, it's like, we know about that because Victoria Nuland, who was with state, and especially back in 2014 when Zelensky magically came into power through a democratic process. Well, she kind of engineered that whole thing, that whole color revolution, as they call it, in 2014. At that time, there was a deal signed with the US government and Ukraine about, hey, we're going to set up all these labs to study these things you've been making and make sure they're not dangerous so we can mitigate them as a threat. That's how they do these things.
Right.
Kind of language. Right. Well, I just found, then zip ahead to 2022, 23, Victoria Nuland is at a congressional hearing. Rubio asked her, he's like, what else is going on there? Something, I'll paraphrase. And Victoria Nuland says it. She's like, well, we have several facilities that may be working on dangerous pathogens, and we're worried the Russians will get their hands on them. Like, really? And Rubio had that look on his face like, did you just say that out loud?
Wow.
So there's a lot going on in Ukraine. And if of all the countries in this conflict, and I'm not taking sides here, I'm certainly not, but I'd be most terrified if I was Russia with all this stuff going on, had Donald Trump not gotten into office, because we've seen what Zelensky does. You give that kid a weapon, and he fires it at someone without missing a beat. Can you imagine if we gave them nukes?
Oh my gosh. And talk about the rare earth too, which for some reason the president kept calling raw earth. Is that a different name for it, or was he just getting it wrong?
Yeah, I think he just got it wrong, but
But so your theory is that the war also has to continue to bomb the heck out of the areas that have rare earth underneath them so that BlackRock can get at the minerals, and that BlackRock moved in even before the war started so it could be in place to get the minerals. Is that your theory?
Yeah, so titanium, lithium, aluminum. These are all the biggest ones. Obviously, they all have key. They're all key for making sophisticated electronics and many other things. So the
Mhm.
rare earths, but don't forget the gas. The gas is a big thing. Um, so Europe is supplied most of their natural gas comes from Russia.
Mhm.
Um, Actually, after we shut down all of our stuff under Biden, we
Mhm.
became their third largest customer for natural gas.
Russia's.
So yes,
Okay.
so all through this war. And
Wow.
so what was happening with the USAID, Poland, and Ukraine, um, just prior to 2021, they had this project in place that was building out this whole pipeline with storage facilities, the goal being to cut Russia out of the European market.
Mhm.
And from the maps of the pipelines, which they took it down offline pretty quickly, I
Mhm.
have a copy. Um, but what was happening? It looked to me like Ukraine would have been tapping into Russia's reserves and then pumping it right to Poland. You see, that's the reason why Poland in 2022, that was the first country to offer military hardware for support. They had a vested interest.
I'm not following this, sweetheart. What's the quick, pithy summary about the
Quick
gas?
pithy summary is that people have different countries across, in the EU, um, the UK, Canada, of course, and the United States have invested hundreds of billions of dollars in getting the rare earth minerals, having a seat at the table in the Ukrainian government when they solidify the country, and cutting Russia off from their main customer. That
And
was
so
the goal
peace
for
threatens all of that.
peace threatens all of that because, like they say, the best time for opportunity is in a time of chaos.
God, this is so cynical. You were in the military for much of your career. Why can't we just like pay the defense industry to not make war?
You would think we could do that easily, hence the name.
Right?
So, um,
But
look,
seriously,
some wars are necessary. Yeah,
right?
some wars are necessary. I do believe that, like, the Iraq Kuwait war was a necessary war. I believe the war on terror was necessary, just not the way we went about it. I don't think
Right.
going after Iraq really had to happen. Um, but some wars are necessary. However, it's become more and more prevalent since the ending of the Cold War, and a lot of people consider the Iraq Kuwait war like the last Cold War style war,
Mhm.
because it's containment. Um, a lot of the wars since then have been very, I don't know what you'd even say. It's almost like the way the East India Tea Company would go and raid countries and take them
Mhm.
over to plunder them. That's what
Optional, like plunder wars, just wars of plunder. Is that what you're
it
saying?
does feel like plunder wars, a lot of it. And what happens is you have the war, okay, and then like a whale, and then they have all those little like feeder fish that eat the algae off the whale. Those are
Mhm.
your not only defense contractors but also logistic contractors like
Mhm.
DynCorp and
Mhm.
Halliburton, which was owned by
Mhm.
Cheney,
Right.
who make tons of money off this stuff. And I'll give a final example, then I'll land this plane. As an example of that, so much money goes into the smallest conflicts, and sometimes at not to benefit the soldiers. So when
Hmm.
I was down in Enduring Freedom and I was deployed down to Zamboanga in the southern Philippines,
Mhm.
they made us take out cash. We had to do one transaction a week on the ATM, which was deployed by DynCorp so they could make their fees. The
Evil,
soldiers.
evil, evil.
Yeah,
It's so evil. And also chiming in there, and thank you for your service. Um,
welcome.
I did notice when I was the only American journalist in Guantanamo 6 months into President Obama's administration that the contractors lived like kings and the enlisted men and women lived like very modest, humble existences. It was shocking.
Well, I mean, I never really, as a soldier, you come to expect that you're a soldier, and that's I don't expect to live like a king. I think compared to other militaries, we live pretty good.
Okay. I was just surprised to see the contractors in like townhouses and, just kind of fabulosity compared with the modest barracks or, little simple constructions
Well,
that
they probably wrote that into their contracts. That's why.
I see. All right.
Yeah.
Well, this brings us back full circle. Our poor soldiers, I think I'm not going off out of school to say you've been waiting for months for basic, appointments with the VA. Our
Yeah.
poor soldiers are not getting the care that they need. They're not getting the support that they need. Many lives shattered, many injuries, and we did not put America first. We didn't put our
Right.
soldiers first, and we bore the brunt, and your colleagues bore the brunt, and Europe didn't. And so I guess there's part of me that is just like joyful that we're not sacrificing our men and women for other people's wars anymore, and that we've got I'm just going to say it, we've got a president who's putting America first, and who wants peace. And it's kind of shocking to hear a president say, they're Russian soldiers, they're Ukrainian soldiers, I don't
Mhm.
care, I care about everybody, we want peace. 1,000 people, 2,000 people are dying in your war, Zelensky, every week. We want peace, you have to have a ceasefire. It's amazing. It's like he's not part of a chess board that has gone back for
Yeah.
decades, in which everybody plays the part of pretending to want peace but really wanting to prolong the dirty wars.
Because he doesn't need the money. That's the
Because he doesn't
thing.
need the
He's
money.
not getting paid off. Can I
How
say
do
one
we?
thing about one Zelensky comment that really
Yes,
pissed me
darling.
off?
Then we've got to wrap it up. I fear.
I'm sorry, that guy's a little. If I met him in a bar, I would. But the thing is, I hate that whole narrative about you have two nice oceans. Does he
Mm,
have any idea how many people we've lost crossing those oceans to
hmm,
protect the freedom of the world, or
interesting.
what it's taken to keep people from crossing those oceans? Like,
Hmm,
does he think we just kind of like, play the game of Risk and just happen to get like the place with the oceans? Like, that's what he forgets. When he made that comment, I think that was the turning point right there. You have two
hmm,
nice oceans.
hmm.
It's like, oh please, dude, like we worked hard. Like, this country did not just come out of the fact that we had two oceans. And
Right.
I just, learn. My message to Zelensky is read a book once in a while and make sure it's about history.
Whoa. Well said, darling. You're absolutely right. And we have crossed those oceans and lost so many, and we've lost so many fighting World War I and World War II. And we were fighting
Vietnam
kind of,
and yeah,
there were
Afghanistan.
wars that had to be fought, but we've certainly paid our dues historically for Europe's freedom and our own. All right, we have to end there. People can hear you at 8 o'clock, right?
They can. So if everyone just goes to, let me put on the screen and then I'll pop it on.
Investigate everything here on Daily Clout at eight
Yeah.
o'clock. You're going to hear from Brian O'Shea. He's going to share the things with you then that he is held in abeyance. Investigate everything. And where do people find you on X, darling? And how do they support you?
Oh yeah, you can find me on X at Brian O'Shea SPI, and that's where I look at most of my stuff is on X. Here you go. Okay, and yeah, that's us. So yeah, at Brian O'Shea SPI. And if you are DMing me and with regards to something we talked about in the show, just put that in the subject line so I know to open it up because I get a lot of DMs. But yeah, that's where you can find me. And again, make sure you go to uh, tonight, investigate everything. I mean, you stole a lot of my thunder, but that's okay. I'll put the receipts out there tonight.
There is always more thunder, darling.
And we're always trying to connect these dots, how they affect people, how they affect you. And what I always try to do with my audience, and they're very good about it, is everyone's sending me leads. People are investigating things that will be like in the Midwest connected to some fiasco in Ukraine. It's pretty amazing group
Amazing.
that tunes in. So I really
Citizen
appreciate the audience.
Investigators with Brian O'Shea. Thank you, darling. I'm going to sign off now, and everyone can see Brian at 8.
Well, let me
Thank
hop
you all
off
for
first.
joining us. What,
Let me
honey?
hop off first because it's your show, so I'm gonna leave first.
Okay. Well, I'm going to leave with you. And
All right.
go ahead and support us on Daily Clout. That's DAILYCLOUT.io. And you can go ahead and support me on Outspoken, on Substack Outspoken. And please do, because we need independent journalism, independent commentary. We're beholden to nobody. And we bring you the facts as we see them and many points of view. Thank you. Have a great night.